بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله وخليله وصفوته من خلقه نبينا وإمامنا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سلك سبيله واهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. We're continuing with the first nullifier of wudu that the author mentioned. He mentioned al-khariju min as-sabilain, anything exiting from the two private parts. We gave examples and spoke about matters that fall under this nullifier. All the author mentioned is al-khariju min as-sabilain. We talked about, under this matter, to explain that, defecating and urinating. We talked about passing wind. We talked about madhi, wadi, and then the next matter that we need to speak about and address under this nullifier is al-istihada. Dam al-istihada, the bleeding that's from other than menstruation. And this is a deep topic. What concerns us is what pertains to it in regards to istihada nullifying wudu. Does a woman need to make wudu for every single salah, as is commonly known and widespread? Istihada is the bleeding from other than menstruation. That's the definition of istihada. The first opinion is the opinion of the Hanafiya and the Hanabila and Shafi'iyya, and it's what Ibn Hazm chose. They said that a woman must make wudu for every single salah if she endures istihada. Within that opinion, they disputed when is the proper timing for that woman to make wudu. She's going to make it for each salah, but when? Is it when she's about to make salah? Does she have to wait until the salah timing comes in? If Asr is 5:30, does she have to wait for until 5:30, or can she do it 5:25? They discussed and disputed how it's void and nullified. How is her wudu void and nullified? Is it right after she's done with her fard? Or is the nafil included within that wudu? Or is it when the timing of the salah ends? And there's other disputes and details they had among themselves, but since it's the weaker opinion, we don't need to get into those details. The first opinion is that a woman with istihada, needs to make wudu for every single salah. The second opinion is that it's mustahab for a woman to make wudu if she's on istihada, but it's not a must. And that's the opinion of Maliki, and it's the opinion that Dawood al-Zahiri and al-Shawkani chose among other ulama. This mas'ala centers around a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith Fatima bint Abi Hubaysh. Fatima went to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to ask him about istihada. جاءت فاطمة إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقالت يا رسول الله إني امرأة أستحاض فلا أطهر أفأدع الصلاة؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا، إنما ذلك عرق وليس بحيض، فإذا أقبلت حيضتك فدعي الصلاة، وإذا أدبرت فاغسلي عنك الدم ثم صلي. At the end of the hadith is the statement. قال وقال أبي ثم توضئي لكل صلاة حتى يجيء ذلك الوقت. Fatima bint Abi Hubaysh رضي الله عنها went to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam to ask him about the ruling pertaining to salah while a woman is enduring istihada. Does she leave the salah like she does when she's in her menstrual days? And she explained to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam that the bleeding is persistent and that she doesn't become clean. That's istihada. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إِنَّمَا ذَلِكَ عِرْقٌ وَلَيْسَ بِحَيْضٍ. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam told her, it's from a blood vessel, not menstrual bleeding. So she doesn't have to leave the salah. The very end of the hadith is the statement about what we're talking about. ثم توضئي لكل صلاة. Perform wudu for every salah. That hadith is in Sahih Al-Bukhari, I said. Had that last statement been part of the statement of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it would have been all that is needed. And this shows you that one can't pull out a hadith from the compilations of the hadith books and go to the chapter pertaining to what they need, pull out that hadith and just use it randomly like that. Just like you can't do with the Quran, the verses of the Quran. You need the interpretation of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the understanding of the Salaf, the interpretations of the ulama. Someone may take that hadith, use it on this matter because it appears clear and decisive, when in reality it's not. And without reading the statements of the fuqaha and the fiqh of the hadith, along with the opinions of the muhaddithin on the hadith, one who doesn't read those opinions will come up with the wrong understanding. According to Imam Muslim and An-Nasa'i and Al-Bayhaqi and Abu Dawood and Ibn Rajab, that last statement is a statement of Urwa ibn al-Zubayr. It's not from the word of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the first point. Second point is, there's several weak ahadith. They indicate that a woman with istihada, the bleeding that's other than menstruation, should make wudu for every single salah, but they're weak. Ibn Rajab said, أحاديث الوضوء لكل صلاة قد رويت من وجوه متعددة وهي مضطربة ومعللة. The numerous ahadith specifying wudu for every salah pertaining to this matter, meaning a woman on istihada, have issues with them. When one fully analyzes this matter pertaining to a mustahada, he will see that she does not need to make wudu for every single salah. In fact, some of our contemporary teachers, one whose fatwa is widely circulated, that a woman must perform wudu for every single salah, he later recanted that after years and years of research. Ibn Uthaymeen, he initially stated that a woman must make wudu for every single salah. And then he recanted that. And you see some of those who allege to be his solid students or followers circulate that old fatwa. He later recanted that fatwa and adopted what the Malikiyya said of not requiring wudu for every single salah for a mustahada. In addition to learning the substantive and foundational knowledge from a sheikh, a true student knows the issues that his sheikh changed opinions on. The conclusion on the matter is that wudu for each salah, as it pertains to a mustahada, is not required due to lack of authentic hadith requiring that. And some of the ulama applied similar matters to the same situation. For example, someone with salas al-bawl, which is urinary incontinence, those with continuous loss of bladder control or similar matters, they gave it the same ruling as a mustahada. The Malikiyya opinion is the rajih for many reasons. The statement, first of all, ordering wudu for every single salah, yes, it's in Sahih al-Bukhari, ثُمَّ تَوَضَّئِ لِكُلِّ صَلَاةٍ, but it's from the saying of Urwa, as Ibn Rajab and other muhaddithin stated. Had it been part of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam statement, we wouldn't be talking about this dispute today. Second of all, had wudu been wajib on a mustahada for every single salah, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have clearly informed us of such a common, widespread matter that is endured by women. He would have informed us, and if he did, it would have reached us. Not only is it something common for women, but he was specifically asked, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about issues pertaining to istihada. Yet he never mentioned this detail of wudu for every single salah. Had it been required for a woman to make wudu for each salah, the Messenger ﷺ wouldn't be silent on such an essential detail when asked about the general matter about istihada. Ibn Abd al-Barr in Al-Tamheed, and Ibn Rajab in Fath al-Bari, and Al-Qarafi in Al-Dhakhira, they said everything pertaining to repeated wudu for every salah for a mustahada doesn't stand to be a hujjah, meaning it's not strong enough to stand as proof. Another point, whoever has a continuous ongoing hadath like a mustahada and what resembles it, their hadath doesn't go away. Fatima radiallahu anha told the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the bleeding is persistent and she doesn't become clean. It's not like urine or madhi or wadi or what is like that. Even if it's discharged several times a day, one cleans the najasa goes away. Fatima radiallahu anha said she doesn't become clean. Due to the continuous hadath, there's really no benefit in wudu for such a person where the hadath is continuous and ongoing and never stops. So the purification would be a matter of istihbab, not wujub. You can't obligate it. As a response to those who require wudu for every salah, they say you need to make wudu right before salah or after the timing of the salah comes in. Asr is 5:30. A mustahada makes wudu 5:35. By the time she puts her hijab on and gets ready to do takbirat al-ihram, it's 5:45. Between 5:35 and 5:45, there's continuous ongoing bleeding. Between 5:35 and 5:45, and throughout making her salah, there's a continuous hadath. Even before that, when she was making wudu, there was a hadath going on. Some within the weaker opinion say a woman may pray sunnah with that wudu. She'll continue with her bleeding, with the hadath, even after the fard, while she's making her sunnah salah. They say that does not void wudu. Those who adopt the opinion of wudu for every salah, they say in those intervals that I mentioned, wudu is not nullified with the bleeding. The wudu carries on. So the response is, you say the bleeding doesn't void the wudu between wudu and the salah, and during the salah itself, and after the salah to the point of making the nafil prayer. You say all that does not void the wudu, and the wudu continues through all those intervals. Just as you allow wudu to continue on like that, it should continue on even after and beyond all that. Unless, of course, a woman nullifies her wudu by a different hadath like passing wind. There's no point, and more importantly, no clear proof to say the wudu gets void at the end of the salah timing or at the end of the nafil prayer. Another point is istihada in particular is like bleeding from a vein. The correct opinion is that bleeding from a vein doesn't void wudu, and likewise istihada shouldn't be a nullifier of wudu. The hadith we just took, hadith Fatima radiallahu anha, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam compared istihada to the bleeding of a vein. He's told Fatima radiallahu anha, إِنَّمَا ذَلِكَ عِرْقٌ وَلَيْسَ بِحَيْضٍ. And in Sunan Abu Dawud, it's slightly different. إِنَّمَا ذَلِكَ عِرْقٌ وَلَيْسَتْ بِالْحَيْضَةِ. It's a vein, blood from a vessel. The fact that it's discharged from the private part does not have any effect on changing the ruling. It's like normal bleeding that doesn't void wudu. So Maliki appear to be correct on this matter because there's no clear authentic hadith that require wudu for every single salah. Not making wudu, not obligating a woman with istihada to make wudu for every single salah also coincides with the overall Sharia principles in making things easier. It's making things easier for a mustahada in not just openly making things easier as some people do. It's making matters easier within the Sharia rules and regulations. So basically, as long as she doesn't fall in another nullifier of wudu, like urinating or passing wind or other nullifier of wudu, she does not have to make wudu from this matter. We took urinating and defecating, passing wind, madhi, wadi, istihada, and the final one under al-khariju min as-sabilain, anything exiting from the two private parts. The final matter under that is if someone discharges something that's not normal or common. Like, for example, a kidney stone. Someone who discharges a kidney stone. Someone who discharges worms, like those with pinworm infections. Or someone who swallowed maybe a dime or an object, like a marble, and then discharges it. Or defecates it. Something exceptional, abnormal, maybe pure, but it's discharged from the private parts. And note, I say from the private parts because the next nullifier of wudu addresses the issue of what's discharged from other than the private parts. The first opinion on this is whatever is abnormal or exceptional and discharges from the front and back private parts nullifies wudu, and that is the opinion of Al-Hanafiyya, Al-Shafi'iyya, and Al-Hanabila. Anything discharged from the two private parts, like what we mentioned, nullifies wudu, whether it may be a kidney stone, a penny, a dime, or anything similar to that. And some of them use the general proof, أو جاء أحد منكم من الغائط, the general proof on defecating, and they said that so long as it exits from the same private parts, everything normal or abnormal that exits from those two private parts voids wudu. They also said it exits from the normal exits. So it takes the ruling of what's normal that exits from the normal exits. It must void wudu like what's normal since it's the same exit. What's normal, we're talking about like something like urine or madhi. They also said something like pinworms or stones who are discharged, or if someone swallowed something, some object, and defecated it, they said when it exits, it must contain at least a tiny bit of najasa on it, and that confirms that it nullifies wudu. Someone who accidentally swallowed a dime, then defecated it, they said something like that doesn't just exit without najasa on it, and that's a very strong rationale of theirs. Others, like Al-Malikiyya, said something that's abnormal does not void wudu. They said no wudu is needed for something similar to, for example, pinworms or stones, because it's abnormal and exceptional. Malikiyya compared it to what exits from other than the private parts and gave it that ruling. And they said that doesn't nullify the wudu. Some of the Malikiyya made the exception that it voids the wudu if it exits with najasa. There's clearly more weight on requiring wudu from such discharges. Why? It's exiting from the normal private parts, which normal discharges from them nullify wudu. So it's compared to what's normal. Also, scholars like Ata and Al-Thawri and Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, and Al-Hasan al-Basri, and Al-Awza'i, and Ibn al-Mubarak, and other ulama gave various different statements to the fact that what exits the private parts nullifies the wudu, whether it's normal or abnormal. For example, some of them said one who discharges pinworms, like worms from a pinworm infection, needs to make wudu. Also, it's legitimate or strong to make qiyas or analogy of what's not normal that exits the private parts and what is normal that exits from the private parts. And another point is when analyzing the negators of wudu from the private parts, it appears the reason for wudu is that it exits from the private parts rather than what's normal or abnormal or what's najis or not najis. For example, one passes wind. Wind itself is tahir, yet the fact that it exited from the rectum, it nullified wudu, even though it's not najis. If one burps, which is letting air out from the stomach through the mouth, it doesn't nullify the wudu. Yet air from the stomach through the rectum nullifies the wudu. So they said it's not what's normal or abnormal, usual or not, or najis or not, it's what exits the private parts. If it's even possible that they come out without najasa, one should still renew the wudu. I don't personally know if they do come out without najasa, even if not a tiny bit. Our final mas'ala or sub-mas'ala under discharges from private parts that are abnormal, and it somewhat branches off from the previous mas'ala, is the issue of scopes, like vaginal scopes during exams or colonoscopy exams. And the ruling on that is really summarized by what An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala said. He said if a man or a woman puts something in either of their private parts, like a stick or a finger or a probe or a wick or a string, once it's taken out, it voids the wudu because it's considered something that exited the private parts. His statement appears to mean even if it didn't have najasa on it. Ibn Qudama said if one puts something like grease or maybe possibly he meant oil or something of that nature in their private parts, then it discharges from the private parts. The wudu is void because it exited from the private part, and it will have najasa on it, and that will void the wudu. In Sharh al-Iqna', he said, if one puts anything in their private parts and takes it out, even if it doesn't have najasa, it nullifies the wudu. And in Tasheeh al-Furū', he supported that, and he said that's correct because what exits without najasa is exceptional, meaning that's not what we go by. We don't go by exceptional if that happens. Al-Hajjawi rahimahullah said, in Zadul Mustaqni', he said, ينقض الوضوء ينقض ما خرج من سبيل. Whatever exits from the private parts voids the wudu. And that's al-Shafi'iyya al-Hanabila. Other madhahib like al-Zayla'i from the Hanafiya in Tabyin al-Haqqa', he said, it nullifies the wudu for one to put their hands in either of their private parts. Another mas'ala I just remembered, and this will be the final one under this nullifier, is what about passing of wind from the woman's front private parts? Vaginal flatulence. The emission of air from the woman's front private parts. And according to Hanafiya, Malikiyya, in one of the opinions of the Hanabila, they said it does not void wudu. Why? They didn't consider it wind, but rather something like convulsions and not something of hadath. It's not real wind, and even if it's wind, even if it's passing of wind, they said it's not originating from a place of najasa. They also said there's no clear proof on it, and it's a matter of doubt, and nullifiers of wudu are not based on matters of doubts. Some even compared it to burping. Shafi'iyya and another opinion within the Hanabila, and Ishaq ibn Rahawayh chose it, and Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak chose it. They said that one must make wudu from it. And now what we said, whatever exits the male or female private parts from either of their private parts, front or back, meaning front or back, it voids wudu. It meaning what exits front or back of wind voids wudu. And he said that is what Al-Shafi'i specified in his book Al-Umm. They also did qiyas, analogy, on everything exiting the private parts. Everything exiting the private parts voids wudu, so this should as well. They also used the general ahadith on passing, on the fact that passing wind nullifies wudu. They said this is similar. The hadith that we took pertaining to the general passing of wind, and they compared this to the general passing of wind. Hadith Abu Hurairah that we took, لا وضوء إلا من صوت أو ريح, or hadith Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Asim أنه شكى إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الرجل الذي يخيل إليه أنه يجد الشيء في الصلاة فقال لا ينفتل أو لا ينصرف حتى يسمع صوتا أو يجد ريحا. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, who also chose this opinion, used the hadith لا وضوء إلا من صوت أو ريح. The hadith, the narration that's in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, that no wudu is needed unless one smells an odor or hears a sound. A hadith on regular passing of wind, and that nullifies wudu. But they used it as proof on this matter as well. They also commented that this is considered passing of wind, and the hadith didn't specify front or back private parts. It's just broad on passing wind, so this is included in those ahadith. Ibn Qudama mentioned that Salih, the son of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, related that Imam Ahmad, rahimahumullah, considered that this matter is a nullifier of wudu. I know a alim that I studied under that I love, when he taught us this, he mentioned both opinions, and he didn't give a selected opinion. It's safer to renew the wudu from such a matter. It may fall under what's called ilhaqun nadir binadire, given similars the same hukum. It resembles passing of wind. I would say it's just safer to make wudu from it. A final note to keep in mind is like vaginal flatulence and other matters like continuous vaginal discharges that never stop and ongoing. Dependent on the individual and circumstances, it may be given the ruling that we took pertaining to istihada if it's continuous, ongoing, and doesn't stop, and one doesn't become clean from it. So you keep that issue in mind. Let me give an outline of what we took in the past few halaqat to keep your train of thoughts in check. After ghusl and wudu, the author began on the nullifiers of wudu, and he said there was 8 of them. And the author said the first one is al-khariju min as-sabilayn, anything exiting from the 2 private parts. Under that, we talked about explaining that nullifier. We mentioned defecating and urinating. We mentioned passing wind, madhi, wadi, istihada, which is the woman's bleeding from other than menstruation. And the 6th matter that we mentioned was discharges from the private parts that are abnormal, like kidney stones or worms. With that, alhamdulillah, we conclude the author's first nullifier of wudu. Next week, we'll start, insha'Allah, on the second nullifier of wudu. The author said, وَالْفَاحِشُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا. وَالْفَاحِشُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا, which means unclean or filthy or repulsive discharges from other than the 2 private parts. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.